Hello students, in this video we are going to discussing on the topic of presidential form of government. So as we know that the various forms of the government available in the world, and one of the different kinds of the governments are parliamentary forms of government, presidential form of government, semi-presidential forms of government, and some other different types of the governments are there. So in the presidential form of government, as we know, as namely said, the presidential form of the government. So because in this government, the decision of the president is the most important. So the president is the head of the government, as we know that. So in the presidential form of government, the president is the head of the government. But in the parliamentary form of government, we must understand the differentiations of these terminologies and the technicalities of the political science. In the parliamentary form of government, president is the nominal head of the government, but the real head is Prime Minister. But in the presidential form of the government, the president is head of the government and is in charge of implementing laws. Because in our parliamentary form of government, the implementing laws, it is the responsibilities of the executive as the Prime Minister and his cabinet team. The president is only the signing authorities, and he can be, with the experience and the expertise, discussions with the expertise, he finalizes the signatory authorities of the each and law. But in the presidential form of government, the president is the only the in charge of the implementing of the law. This system was created by America and is an excellent illustration of it. The presidential system denies legislative supremacy and is intended for countries that are constitutional monarchies rather than republics. So we know that Joe Biden is the current president of United States of America, and United States of America is not a small territorial nation. It is one of the biggest territorial nations, and even each and every decisions can be taken by that so Joe Biden and or United States of America president. So in the presidential form of government, elections are held every 2 years for the legislature and every 4 years for the president. So we know that, so in Indian context, we are going to be electing for the 5-year durations. But in United States of America, the durations of the president is 4 years. And for the legislature, it is for the 2 years. So we must understanding what are the features of the presidential form of government. So there is a president fixed tenure. So the particular durations of the president is in the presidential system. The president serves as a certain team, like elections are held on a regular basis and even are unaffected by no confidence motions or other legislative proceedings. There are few exceptions to this, such as in some countries where the president can be impeached if he breaks the law. So impeachment process, it is one of the punishment process, and even we can remove from the post from the president of the nation, we can use as the impeachment process. And the second feature is the president wields quasi-judicial authority. A quasi-judicial power is one that has some judicial characteristics, such as the ability to perform hearings and investigations into contested claims and claimed rule and regulations, breaches, and to reach conclusions in the fashion of courts and quasi-judicial organization. The president has the authority to grant pardons and commute sentence imposed by the court. It is one of the greatest powers and functions of the president, because he is the sole authority to grant pardons to the criminals, and even the commute the sentence imposed by any courts. And even the another feature is president is elected directly by the people through the electoral college. In the United States of America, elections are held using the first past the post method. So the candidates are directly elected by public vote in other US elections. However, the president and vice president are not directly elected by the country citizens. They are elected by the electors through the electoral college methods. That is the indirect forms of the elections. The people of each state elect all members of the federal legislative directly. So the another features is the legislature and the executives are separate. So in the parliamentary form of government, we must understood like that legislature and the executives are the same. So that is not a separate basis, but here, so in the presidential form of government, both legislatures and executives are separate. And even executives and other things not responsible to the legislature. And there is no differences between real and nominal executives. So we must understand what are the merits of the presidential form of government. So the first merit is separation of power, because here there is a clear-cut separation of power we can see in the United States of America presidential form of government, because the three branches of the governments are independent of one another. Administrative efficiency is substantially improved. So why this separation of power? Because it is only for the administrative efficiency. And the second merit is expert government, because the executive branch does not have that include legislator. The president can appoint specialists in a varieties of the professions to lead appropriate departments or ministers. This will ensure that the government is made up of skilled and knowledgeable individuals. And even in the presidential form of government, there is no instabilities, there is only the one, there is the stabilities. This sort of the administration has a high level of stability because the president tenure is fixed and not dependent on parliamentary support. He does not have to worry about losing power. There is no possibilities of the administration collapsing unexpectedly. The president is not under any political duress in making judgment, because he is just working without stress. So that is a very important. Less influence of the party. The political parties have less clout because the government duration is fixed, therefore they don't try to unseat it. So what are the another phase of the presidential form of government? That is the demerits of the presidential system. The first one is less responsible executives. So the whole responsibilities within the power of president of the nation, so the executive is less responsible because each and everything can be surveillance by the president of the nation. And even the second demerits is deadlock between the executives and the legislatures. We can in some future explanations. And even the rigid government. So what kind of the rigid and the flexible meaning in the constitutions of the every nation is? So we can have through that using the flexible method for the changing amendment some of the things in the constitution. But in this government, only the president decision can be taking that. So that's what the rigid conditions can be happening that. So president sweeping the powers. So they are not handling the majority powers. So president can easily sweep the powers, and even the president came to know that when it is having that the seeds of the safe and secure. Sometimes the presidential form of government working as the dictatorship form of the government. That's what presidentialship, the form of government having the both sides of the faces like a merits and the demerits. But sometimes United States of America, like a states of nations, having expecting such kind of things, because it is not like that the parliamentary form of government, that is only that the presidential form of government. Thank you.